This is the SummerCart64. It's an open source flashcart for Nintendo 64. This particular version is made by Kaico, and it's pretty great. So a couple of weeks ago, Kaico, who've supported my channel for quite a long time, sending me things for review, sent me a whole bunch of new stuff to take a look at, including this thing here, the SC64, SummerCart64. It's a flashcart for the Nintendo 64. You can use that for playing games, you can use it for playing homebrew, ROM hacks, all sorts of stuff. It's even capable of emulating the 64DD, which was the disk drive add-on, only available in Japan for a short amount of time, which is now extremely rare and extremely expensive. Now, it's important to note that this is a completely open source project and it's fully credited on the website by Kaico and also even on the label that's included on the product. Now, open source means that anybody can download the schematics, download the information, download the files, and actually, say, 3D print their own shell, get a company like, say, PCBWay to print off the PCBs, assemble the whole thing and make it themselves for a pretty low cost. However, not everybody has the time or skills or patience to do that and wants to just get their hands on one of these cartridges and use it. So as part of that open source arrangement, any company can use those designs, manufacture these in quantity, and then sell them. And that's exactly what Kaico have done here. Now, prior to this, I've never actually owned a flashcart for Nintendo 64, usually because they were just so expensive, and also because I have got a huge stack of original cartridges anyway. But this one is at a much more affordable end of the range, and also I found it very handy to stock it up with ROMs of all the games that I've got in my many boxes, and just be able to reset the cartridge and choose whichever game I want to play. So in terms of the quality of the actual cartridge itself, it really is good. Like, if I was going to build one of these myself, I would have to 3D print it, and there are always compromises made when it comes to 3D printed products. But this is a fully injection molded, custom designed shell. It's got an opening for the SD card. It's got an opening on the other side for a USB-C port. And the actual materials, the colors, the quality of finish, they're very authentic. When I've got them side by side with an original Nintendo 64 cartridge, it's got a slightly more matte finish, but the color is a very close match. The label is really professional quality. Like, what they've done is they've taken this and made it into a really high quality commercial item. So when I spoke to Kaico, it's a relatively new product. They've made a relatively small amount of those available on their website. I'll link that in the description. And they're just going to test the market and see what sort of interest there is. At the moment, my one was just in a plain box with a label on, so it's not the final commercial packaging yet. But I was curious as to what was actually inside here. So there's just 4 Phillips screws on the back, so I opened it up and took a look inside. There's actually a button in there. I think there's a lot of stuff to do with programming and debugging your own games, all that stuff that's way beyond my grade. But on some versions of this cartridge, there is actually a button on the back. With this one, it is on the PCB. I've tried pressing, it does work. So if you needed to use that, you might have to customize the shell, drill a hole out there to get to it or something like that. But I doubt it's something that I'm going to be using. The quality of the build inside was really neat, no issues there. There's also a battery in there because this has a real-time clock. So if you're playing games like the original Animal Crossing, that will work. However, there are some caveats. Now, if you've got a PC, it'll be absolutely plain sailing with this. I actually, when I got this, I went on the website for the SummerCart64, learned all about it, got myself an SD card, went through all the instructions to set up the SD card, the folder structures and so on, got it ready to go in the cartridge, took it out the box. There was already an SD card in there. It was already all set up, so I didn't need to do all that. So if you don't need to make that mistake if you get one of these. It's got an 8GB SD card in there. Now, when you actually try and eject the SD card, it's one of those push release ones. So you push it into a spring release and it comes out. But once it's kind of out, I found it very difficult to get out of the cartridge. He says getting it out really easily. So what I've found is a little easier is if I just kind of get my hand ready to catch it, push in, and then just let go of the spring and it just pings out and I'll catch it in my hand. So it's got an 8GB micro SD card in there, which is plenty for adding whatever you want on there. I don't think you're likely to need much more than that. You can even add things like Game Boy Color, NES, Super NES ROMs, but like it will kind of emulate those to an extent, but it's not great. Other emulators are better, but it's a fun little thing to try out. But the main thing we're here for is the Nintendo 64, and it runs those flawlessly. From what I've tested so far, everything works absolutely great. It runs really well on the 64DD games, the disk drive games, and you can do things like there's an F-Zero X expansion on the 64DD, and what you have to do from the menu, the menu is great. It's dead straightforward. It's just a list, and however you structure your folders on here will appear on screen. So if you want subfolders of ROM hacks, commercial releases, 64 disk drive, whatever else, you can structure those however you want. If you want to have lists of ROMs in alphabetical order, in alphabetical folders, it's fine for all of that. You just work your way through the folders and then you can open the game. So if you wanted to play, like say, that F-Zero X disk drive expansion version, what you have to do is you go on and you select the game itself first. Now, to make this easier, I put the F-Zero X ROM in the same folder as the 64DD files, and then go to open that, but you don't launch it. You come back out, go to the expansion content, you press R on your controller, and it'll launch the whole thing. And again, it worked really well. It's a really great game too. Now, as I say, if you've got a PC, you are going to find this very, very easy. You simply set up the folders as you want them to organize your ROMs. You will have to add your own emulators to it. It's not actually provided with emulators, but that's fairly straightforward to find and do. And the guidance on the actual SummerCart64 website will tell you everything you need to know of what to put where. I ran into problems because I was using a Mac, and there's a few slight differences with using a Mac compared to using a PC. So the first thing is there is an interface actually on the console itself. When you launch the menu, you can make your way through various different settings, but some of the settings you can't do remotely. You can't do them on the console to the cartridge. You have to connect to a PC and use an interface to actually do things like set the real-time clock and things like that. That needs a PC, so I've yet to get my hands on a PC or laptop to actually do that and set it up with. I mean, it doesn't really affect it for me at the moment because I've not been using any games that require that clock. It just launches the games and files that I want to launch and plays them fine. It also automatically saves your games, which is great. But if you wanted to set that clock, you would need a PC to plug in the USB-C cable to your computer and set that up. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I can get that working with a Mac. But the biggest problem I ran into with a Mac, and I thought at first was an issue with the cartridge, it was an issue with me not understanding what I was doing. There's nothing new there. So when you copy files across from a Mac to an SD card, it creates an additional file that's like a ._ version of the file for kind of metadata, so that when you plug it back into the computer, it can work out whatever else has been done with it and the usage stats and whatever else. But the issue is that when you launch it on the actual console, you get any of the files that you've copied preceded by these ._ files. Now, I hadn't noticed this at first. Every time I thought I was trying to launch a game file, I was actually trying to launch one of these ._ one of these metadata files. So obviously it wasn't loading, and I was trying everything, tried reformatting the card, resetting up the folder structure and everything else. And it's only when I went on the 64DD games, because there's only like 9 of those, that I realized there was another list below the ones I was on, and I had to actually scroll down beyond those ._ files and then get to the main files that I should have been loading, those ROM files, and those worked fine. So it was great. It was just due to the nature of copying across. So if you've got a Mac, watch out for that. If you are having issues with that, you need to search for ._clean, which will actually just merge those files with the original files on your SD card, so that when you launch it on here, you won't have that list. So once I figured out how to do that, everything was straightforward. I think I'll probably link that in the description as well. So if you're a Mac owner, you'll be finding that less frustrating. But yeah, actually using it, it was really, really good. It launched the games very quickly. It highlighted to me just how good I must have been at playing N64 games back in the day, because I am bad at them now. I used to love playing games like Forsaken, where you're kind of navigating your way around a 3D maze on this kind of flying hover bike, and I just couldn't get my orientation right at all. Playing on F-Zero, very twitchy controls. I did notice that the replacement thumbstick, the analog stick that I'd put onto one of my N64 controllers in a recent video, is actually very, very sensitive, and it actually worked better for me to go back to one of my original controllers for games like F-Zero, where it can have that very, very sort of twitchy control. But I've been loving going through, playing all these different games, trying them all out, and I've not encountered any problems at all. No crashes, no nothing like that. I've been using actually Kaico's HDMI adapter to play it through on my TV. They make all sorts of stuff, and again, I've got a bunch of stuff sent to me recently which I'll be reviewing, or at least showcasing. I've not really got the time to go in huge depth with reviews in general, but you know, I'll try these things out and I'll let you know what I think. And also, again, if you ask me in the comments if there's specific things you want me to try out or test out, I'll do that, of course. Now, this was sent to me free by Kaico. As I say, they've been supporting my channel even since I had a very small number of subscribers, sending me things for review. But even like back then, it's one of those, isn't it? Like, it's been sent to me, I've got it free. They've not asked me to say anything specific about it. They don't get to see the video before I actually publish it. They haven't paid me to say anything about it. It's literally just for me to test out. But I have liked their products in the past. In terms of their part in this product, it's simply just producing the PCB and putting it in an enclosure. It's not really a Kaico product as such. And the whole thing with the SummerCart project, I hadn't heard about it before. I've done loads of reading about it since. Absolutely fascinating. It's amazing. Like, I have only been on the tip of the iceberg in terms of what this thing can do. So yeah, if you are interested in that, or if you've had these sort of flashcarts in the past and are interested in something new, I do believe, I haven't got one to test, but I am told that this loads games much more quickly than the EverDrive, and there's a few other advantages in terms of some of the games it'll run and things like that. Very little criticism that I've seen for this project. So yeah, I mean, if you fancy it, the cost is affordable. Like, I've been on the Kaico website, it's currently there for £70, which is a lot of money, but it's also a lot cheaper than the alternatives that are out there. So, you know, that's going to be something that you can decide whether that's for you or not. In terms of Kaico's part here, making it into a really professional product, like the quality of the molding is excellent. As I say, I've opened it up and looked inside. Everything is really, really neatly produced. The quality of the print on the label is comparable, if not even better, than on original cartridges. The mold lines all meet up perfectly. The build quality is great. It feels nice and solid. The color match is good. It's a really, really high quality product. The only slight downside is occasionally I've had issues with trying to get the SD card out of there. I mean, as I say, when I showed you, it just came out fine. But normally I've been having some issues trying to get that out. Again, it's come out fine, so I'm not even going to include that as a criticism. So yeah, if you think this might be for you, or you want to find out a little bit more about it, I've linked the product page in the description. You can go and have a look at that. And also, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know, just like I took this thing apart, I love taking things apart and modding them. If you want to get into modding, ZedLabz are a supporter of my channel. I've got an affiliate link for them that I'll leave in the description too. You can get loads of modding stuff at a discount, and you'll be supporting my channel at no extra cost. So there you go. That's just a quick rundown on the SummerCart64. If you want to know more, feel free to ask me in the comments. I can always put together another video that goes in a bit more detail. In the video when I was testing this out on my modern TV, I was using Kaico's N64 line doubler adapter. I've made a video about that too a little while ago. I'll link it up here if you want to check it out. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.